Hey everyone, Magic Lover, doing a little bit of a M14 preview. Looking right now at one of the formats I play primarily, which is Commander, aka EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander. Getting to be a pretty popular format on Moto, and very interesting kind of format. So anyway, just wanted to take a look through M14 and give you some thoughts on some cards that I think will make a difference based on some Commander decks I've seen. One of the first cards that I think is going to have a nice impact on Commander's Archangel of Thune. This second ability, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That's pretty phenomenal. Lord knows, with the recent mechanic of Evolve being put out there, a lot of creature cards, a lot of permanents have a +1/+1 counters matter quite a bit. And as you probably know from watching this, one of my favorite commanders to play is Gave, which is set to abuse +1/+1 counters pretty effectively. And I don't even go for all the cheap stuff with Kitchen Finks and anything else. So this definitely, as a 3/4 lifelink flyer, is nice, but that second ability is going to get pretty crazy because it's not even tied to her. I mean, obviously it'll trigger off her lifelink, but anytime you can gain life, so any sack outlet for life or any incidental life is going to really just do a number. And +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So if you've got this in Cathar's Crusade, it's pretty much good game. You're just going to have a giant army pretty quick. So very anxious to crack one of these and get her in my Gave deck for sure. Very similar to Stormherd, which doesn't really see a lot of play in Commander. I think Devout Invocation may. It might be too much of a win more in that by the time you get to 7, I mean, Commander obviously is a big mana format. Getting to 7 is not all that tricky. Heck, some decks do it by turn 3 or 4. That's what happens when Mana Vault, Crypt, and Soul Ring are all allowed. But anyway, getting to 7 isn't that tough. So if you've got 3 or 4 creatures, you're basically spending a turn building an army of 4/4s, which probably brings your opponent to their knees. But I'd be curious to see if this has an effect in Commander. My guess is not much, but in the right deck, maybe. Planar Cleansing, while this has certainly been around as a reprint, it's nice as a reprint since it's a very popular Commander card. They were starting to get a little pricey, to pick them up, so I think it's nice to see this reprinted since it really won't be played in, limited or constructed. So these should come out relatively cheap and should be able to be traded for Commander players pretty well. As a quick side note, it is nice to see with the M14 rule changes that clone no longer equals cheap blue removal to kill your legendary creature, so I do like that. And I already have enough time playing against, tough enough time playing against mono blue. It gets easier with clone out of the picture, but unfortunately Elite Arcanist is probably going to fill in the gap since this guy's Isochron Scepter, Panoptic Mirror on a stick. So this is going to be tricky to deal with. I'm sure getting a nasty counterspell or divination or some sort of tiding, some sort of big casting cost spell is going to be tricky, because if obviously you can kill him, you got the removal, that's a great 2-for-1, but otherwise he gets to untap, he's going to do something pretty crazy. So I'd watch out for this guy appearing in a blue deck across the table from you soon. Chase's Mindseeker. I think this could see play because this ability, it doesn't have to deal combat damage, it doesn't have to do something, it just has to enter the battlefield. So, a 4/4 flying for 6, not the greatest stats, but you combine this with something like a Yeah, you combine this with something like a Conjurer's Closet, which is one of my favorite cards, just to, blink your creature, get that extra triggered ability, and, doing this every turn becomes very quickly a backbreaker, unless you're playing against like an all-creature deck, but um, Commander usually isn't that type of format, so I'd be curious if this makes its way into a few blue decks to be abused. And just as you were demoralized enough when your opponent plays Consecrated Sphinx, Windreader Sphinx comes down as a second creature that does obscene amounts of card draw for your opponent. Since blue has no shortage of flyers, it's, this guy attacks, he's going to survive, and at least draw one, so a little more conditional draw, but the potential to be abused. I can see this being in a Talran deck, and, maybe if not the turn that you swing for lethal, the turn before, it's going to draw you, 3, 4, 5 cards. So, curious if this comes in paralleled with Consecrated Sphinx. I can see Dark Prophecy being in a couple of, like maybe a mono-black Thrall deck, something along those lines, where, you can really abuse this. I mean, obviously in a 20 life format, losing a life, drawing a card, having to have a creature die, not great. But in a 40 life format where, it's a creature dependent kind of thing, if you get 4 or 5 creatures out, you get your board swept, someone, wraths or whatever, you're going to lose 5 life but draw 5 cards. I mean, you're definitely going to recover quicker than your opponent with that. So, 3 black mana, going to relegate it to predominantly mono black or mostly black decks that are heavy on creatures, but I think in those decks this might be an interesting addition. I'd be curious to see if this has a home there. I know Grim Return is going to see a lot of play. I'm betting that in a lot of black decks, specifically because it's surprisingly only 2 colorless and 1 black. I would have thought something like this as a reanimator might have gotten a 1 colorless, 2 black as a casting cost, but as an instant, in a 4-person game, just imagine every cool creature that gets thrown into a yard. Nope, that's mine. So that's pretty spicy. I like that effect, and I can't wait to play with it. And obviously, in terms of big mana formats, 9 is about as big as it gets. But it is Liliana's ultimate. Put all creature cards from all graveyards into the battlefield under your control. So I could see this being part of either a mill deck or just a black multiplayer, sweeper kind of deck where you're just killing everything in sight, trying to get in the graveyard, and then trying to win by resolving this beauty. So I'm sure I'll be seeing this from opponents shortly. One interesting red card I could see in Commander for mostly red-based decks would be Mindsparker. Great, against the bane of their existence, which is white-blue. So I could see this providing the extra pain point. This probably draws a counter or removal to some degree, and a 3/2 first strike on a 3 casting cost body, not too bad. So this I can see getting some play. And speaking of getting play, I can already count the amount of times I'm going to see either a Zilran of the Claw or a Kali of the Vast pop a Scourge of Valkus into play and just beat the snot out of me in my little token army, which I'm so fond of creating. But yeah, this thing will definitely prove to be a beat stick, a 4/4 flyer that pumps for 5 on its own, but definitely blows up your little horde is going to be annoying, I am sure. Moving on to green, it's nice to see with Elvish Mystic that green, besides Landwar and Finehorn, does have another 1 green, tap for green, Elf Druid play. Garruk will be an interesting addition to many Commander decks, I'm sure. Being able to dig for critters, plunk them down, or tutor and plunk. So I can see myself picking one of these up and adding them to my creature heavy green base decks. Green does get one more piece of kind of situational removal in a hunt the weak, a fight based card. So you do have to have a critter that can tangle with someone else with a +1/+1 benefit, or something like a Deadly Recluse or a Glissa or acidic slime, something with death touch that kind of allows you to take down anything. I don't like this as much as repeatable things like Uvenwald Tracker, but nice to have that kind of effect still. Because who doesn't love a good fight? Another interesting card that's probably way too slow and weak for standard and limited, but great for Commander would be kind of an Into the Wilds. Sort of like an Abundance style effect, but great with anything else that helps you filter the top of your deck. So whether it's Sensei's Divining Top or Miri's Guile or Library, Sylvan Library, running any of that into combo with this is going to net you some very significant card advantage by always hitting those land drops and basically drawing 2 a turn. So, I don't know if it's right costed for this, but I get that it's a powerful effect with that kind of filtering and draw ability. So, curious to see if this makes it in. I am a fan of Hydras, so all I can say about this is wow. Double wow, double the number of +1 counters on each creature you control. Hells yeah, this is going into dang near every deck I play. I mean, this is just saucy. And speaking of saucy whenever triggers, Primeval Bounty, this has got to go into every deck I play. This should just read Value Town. I mean, this thing just looks too great. No mana cost. It's 6, so sure, you're going to pay for it. It's an enchantment. It's going to eat every naturalize in the book. But if you get to untap with this with any sort of a grip and mana, you should just be able to put some hard, beat down. And I like it. I like it a lot. So it'll definitely go into decks. As a quick side note, I do play a Felon of Havenwood deck, fungus-based deck, as kind of a fun deck, and I never knew this card existed. I saw it here and saw it was a reprint and went, what? So, yeah, I feel a little ashamed because this is going to definitely, I'm going to crack one of these drafting or just crack packing and definitely put this in in my Thelon deck. Can't imagine it not being in there, and ashamed that it's not already in there already, so I'm glad to see that. Pretty sure this is going to appear in just about everyone's Commander deck. I mean, who doesn't want repeatable tutoring? And 5 is not that steep of a cost, so it's not like you have to pay 10. It's 5 now, 5 the next turn. So I can see this being in a lot of different decks, and certainly with Commander being the format of big fatties, a lot of those big fatties have triggered abilities. So I am hoping 2 of my favorite cards get targeted with this when I eventually pick one up and put it in, namely Hornet Queen and Avenger of Zendikar. So that would be nice. Also, I could see a pretty big Michaeloth doubling there. I would like double the amount of Saproling tokens for 2 mana, please. And on a sad note, my Gaia's Cradle just became all that more fragile, so I gained the ability of not losing to Vesuva, but lose it to another essentially Tectonic Edge reprint. So I have to play around land destruction now more, since most of my decks do involve abusing Gaia's Cradle. And one last little thing that has nothing to do with gameplay, but just something interesting. I do love the artwork on the basic lands. I would love to seen some of these in full Zendikar style, full art lands, because I think some of this artwork is for basic lands, really sharp and snazzy. I think these look great. So even if these two look darn near identical, so I'm sure I'm going to see people play this and go, oh, tap for green. Oh wait, whoops, no, wrong one. But yeah, I mean these look great. So anyway, I'm sure to be some new fun and additions to Commander, and as always, thanks for watching.